Okay. Um, Thank you, Susan. Good morning, everyone. This is Yassi Mogadam. I'm the Executive Director of International Society of Service Innovation Professionals. And we're one of the sponsors of this call. Happy to be so. And welcome, everyone. And I encourage you to check out IZIP. I'll put it in the chat, izip.org. And invite you that if you're not a member, please join. We have several projects working on the intersection of AI and services, and invite you all to join. Thank you.
So over to you now, Terri. Thank you, Yassi. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And let me bring up the slides. Okay. Desktop, there we go. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Terri Griffith. I am a professor of management and entrepreneurship at Santa Clara University. And I like to highlight that not only are we in the heart of the Silicon Valley, but we're also the oldest degree granting institution, and I like to say west of a lot of things, because I know it's more than just west of the California border. So it's always been interesting to be at this old institution, you know, old by US standards or even, you know, Western standards, and be thinking about how technology changes the environment we're in and certainly the work processes that we're in. And I will say that I am also a member of IZIP, so I can heartily recommend everybody joining in. Today, I'm going to be talking about helping workers help themselves, about thinking in 4T, which I see as a strategy for all of us and certainly our users and clients and customers in thinking about automation of all forms, but AI in particular, given I think that AI is more of a black box, certainly to many, many users. And my assumptions of the audience are that we design, we sell, and we implement these technologies. And so I'll be speaking to it in that particular sense. And the goal, and I absolutely am going to leave time for questions, is if we and our customers learn to think in 4T, we're going to provide better designs, we're going to provide better adoption, we're going to have better use and certainly better growth. And I think it's also a way to help people think about their positions and their jobs going forward as automation becomes even more important. And it's a very frothy time. I was recently at one of my national meetings, and I have never seen so many books by good people come out on a single topic in my career. And I've been thinking about the future of work since around 1984 and following the publication process as it relates to the general audience market throughout that whole time. And never have I seen so many good books come out. And so I'm just offering these two. And then the third is actually my favorite of this particular class, because they do such a nice job of helping people understand how to do the augmentation that many of us talk about. You know, how do you augment your work with the different kinds of technologies that are becoming available? And this image I provide just as a common comment around how work is changing. And the vertical line is the one that I think is perhaps the most interesting in terms of disclosed artificial intelligence funding in billions of dollars. And that's going back a year. So I suspect that line is looking even taller and would mess up my scale even more. The other lines are looking at UK and US growth in independent workers or the self-employed. You know, certainly many of you understand that the US data is not as clean as we might like. And so the line that trickles down is one of the US markers. But in general, I think we can all agree that work is changing, and a lot of that change is enabled by our technologies. And just because any talk on AI has to talk about what it's going to do to people losing their jobs or gaining new jobs, I offer this. This is a combination of a couple of different reports about predictions and when these predictions are expected to hit. The data on the left is US based and the data on the right is more global. And certainly you see a pessimistic view here. Some of these studies are perhaps a little bit more rigorous than others, but I think the point we can all take away from it is our work is changing, and it might be good, especially as a professor in the management and entrepreneurship department, for us to understand how to offer something to the people who are looking at images like this one. So in a specific industry, we can see the effect on newsroom employees, and the question I have there is, what happened to those people? What process did they go through as they were looking at the changes that were coming down the road? And that's where we get to thinking about top-down and bottom-up approaches. Most of those books, and I will be able to say absolutely most of the pages in those books, talk about a top-down process. So what our organization should be doing in this kind of an environment. And what I'm going to do here is take a little bit of a different perspective and say, let's talk about the bottom up. And so that's how we get to the issues of how do we help workers help themselves. And I'm okay with those workers being inside an organization or being independent workers, though I have some work that says I think the independent workers are actually in a worse position. They have fewer resources, less people worrying about their professional development, and they certainly don't have the deep pockets to access some of the technology that we're talking about. The trouble with the bottom up, and in fact the top down too, the trouble with the bottom up is it requires a different way of thinking. And I wrote a book in 2012 talking about work and technology and organizational process in general. And as we did that, we found that this way of thinking, where you bring together people, technology, and organizational practices all at the same time, and you manage those in concert, that's a very rare skill, a very rare approach to things. And so now my focus is very much on how do we help trigger that kind of thinking. So I'm taking a page out of the marketer's book here and looking for a rhyme. And it turns out rhymes actually work. I wanted to make sure that that was not just what I happen to see on TV. We see in 3D, but we need to think in 4T. And by that, I mean target, so our strategic goal or even our personal goal, the talent that we have available, the technology tools that we can access, and then the technique or the process, the organizational forms, how we bring these things together. And I give some examples here. Knowledge, skills, and abilities as being a form of the talent. The technology from AI to ZAX. ZAX is actually a tool that we can use to do roofing with our slate roofs. So the idea here is it's all forms of technology, from the most complex to the least, and our methods and our policies about how we bring these things together. No silver bullet. Again, drawing from the engineering literature there, and the ability to document that no single approach is ever going to give us the kind of support that we need. We really do need to think across the target, the technology, the talent, and the technique. And given that we all design, sell, and implement these technologies, we've got to come to think in this kind of a way and to think about how do you bring these concepts together. And if we do that, we're not going to be sitting on the sidelines, which is a concern I have sometimes for universities. We're going to help people take advantage of the tools that are already available today, and we're going to help them prepare for the future. This different way of thinking is the hard part. And we have evidence that it really is something that's difficult to do, the idea of being able to bring together these things and do the form of analytical thinking that we might need. I think Danny Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is a great start for understanding the challenges of bringing this approach forward. He talks about system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. And in system 1, things are automatic. This is your gut feel, your initial response. You're pretty sure that what you're thinking is correct. And it's easy, but there's really no sense of voluntary control. You just know. On the other hand, with system 2, which is the shift I think we need, given the complexity of the situations we're talking about, we need concentration. We have to handle complex thought. We need to be in control of our thinking, and we need to understand that these are choices that we're making. And yet we know from his work and decades of research in decision making and cognition, that these are difficult things to help people to do. So system 2, or in my instance, this thinking in 4T, is hard. Now, what he says in the book is it's hard if you're not ready or your attention is directed elsewhere. And so my question is then, how do we think about how to direct that attention? Because people are at a moment, we are at a phase where people are being thoughtful about how they use technology in their work and how organizations bring in the different kinds of technologies. And I've talked about it in these 4 T's with the target, the talent, the technology, and the technique, but maybe this is in fact a better model. This is actually the baby toy that I give out to my friends. And the point is that we all need to understand how organizations are put together. And they're put together not in the way that we sometimes see on an org chart. Instead, they're put together in something that looks a lot more like this. And you have metal dowels, you have kind of these random things sliding up and down, and then you have a lot of elastic. So if I pull on one part, ideally everything moves, they move together. But if I just hold them steady, then not so much. I could actually break it. And so the idea is I can't change just one thing. I have to change these things in concert and think about them all together. So that's how I get from the 4T imagery to this thing that's more tightly tied together. And again, no silver bullets. 3 macro practices, the idea that we're going to stop, look, and listen. I've used here the material coming from the book Reinventing Jobs. So helping people break down their work and helping them think about how to get improved performance out of the particular things that they're doing, how to do kind of a negotiation across those 4 T's. That turns out to be a fairly good strategy for helping people think about how to blend them together. But then also sharing and being transparent about the things you tried, how they worked, and what other people might do as a result. And that we have this as an ongoing process of improvement. I can't say that we've had great examples. A colleague of mine, Matt Bean, who's now at UC Santa Barbara, has done some beautiful long-term studies looking at the role of technology in hospitals especially. And Wired magazine has picked up some of his work. And so they're presenting it now to a much more general audience. And I'll stop here for a second. The takeaway from his things are across his studies, he sees a similar pattern. The robot gets installed, it handles a set of dirty, dangerous, or boring tasks. But once things are the same or slightly better than before, he finds that the redesign of the work stops. And I want to highlight a particular word here. Once the robot gets installed, right? The troubling thing is thinking in 4T is about implementation, not installation. And in the earlier stages of my career, I did a lot of work looking at implementation versus installations or adoptions. And this is a very powerful area. And I'm sure, given the people listening here, you guys understand. The implementation is a dynamic process. The target moves. The talented people keep thinking up new and different things to do with the technology. The technology itself doesn't stop updating. And ideally, our techniques can always get better. There's this great chance to leverage our work in Six Sigma and Agile, design thinking, any of the things we do where we help people think about making improvements and helping them bring together all their resources, not just the particular one that might have triggered the change, but all their resources, and let them do something that's better than what they had before and continues to become better. Some of the ideas I'm thinking about right now, and this is ongoing work, come from the ideas of nudge. How do we set up scenarios where people are more likely to do these things? But again, if we're going to see in 3D, we need to think in 4T. And, I smile as I think about the, thinking in 4T and the rhyme and all, but we do need to find something that is going to help trigger. Six Sigma, Agile, these all have great branding around them, and I think that's really helpful. So if you could help me think about the branding and every time I get the chance to talk about this, I get some new ideas. So, please send those along. My email and Twitter will come up again at the end. But I do want to show something very quickly. And again, drawing from this medical idea of see one, do one, teach one, I'm going to show two tools and an exercise that could be used as you think about that. So to see one, I'm going to start with this gentleman who's a vice president of sales for an organization, and he's using Eva from Voicera. So this is an AI-enabled transcription tool. And many of you may use it. I know Yassi has been trying it out. So let's see what he says, and then let's see how we can think about him as a customer, more from the customer perspective, if we were with Voicera, or if we were trying to help people think about how to implement this tool. I'm just offering up some of the information they give about it, and you guys can come back and look at those later.
TableUp is a seamless guest retention platform for restaurants, so partnerships are more important than most industries. I think one of the worst things that can happen in a bad meeting is you're talking about these ideas as if they were new, and they're the same exact ideas you talked about last week. Now we're burning everybody's time, everybody's salaries, etc., talking about it again. My experiences with Eva have been great. I love having her in meetings. Best times I have with Eva are when I've blown a call out of the water, I've given a fantastic demonstration, and I can't remember a damn thing that's important to drive the sale forward. Now with Eva, I have this great call. I can marry it to the notes that I wish I could have taken on that call, and I'm going to close that deal. Whenever you're eliminating certain aspects of your role, you can focus on the other ones. And really here on this call, everything that normally I would have to do that Eva does now can be done by her. Like it's not like I'm doing a better job taking those notes, those highlights. So if she's doing it at the clip I need, it lets me focus right on that customer and ultimately give a better download.
So there's one user's perspective, and I think they did a very nice job of cutting that video together so I can see the target. His target is he wants to make sales. And then this is the first tool I offer. This is one is a little bit more linear than the next one, where I will have people think about the talent, the technology, and the technique and break it down into what would be a low-level use, what would be a medium use, and then what would be a high-level use. And if we take the talent case, so in this situation, he needs to make sales, and he knows that the information he offered on that sales call is going to be valuable to him in the future. So if he's listening and talking and writing and relying on his memory, that's a high use of the talent dimension, versus a high use of the AI dimension is using the AI voice description. And a low use of technology would be the paper and pencil. Certainly the technique comes in there as well. So I can have people break these things down just by saying, you're going to make some sales calls. Here's someone who has this kind of a scenario where he's on the phone, he's trying to push a sale forward and make a call and keep track of things. So what are the different ways we could have done this? And then have them think in advance about the high, medium, and low. So I'm getting them to stop, look, listen, and then think about those dimensions, and then think about different ways you might be able to negotiate these different dimensions together. A different way of doing it would be to have something that really shows all three at once. And I like to use this version. I typically would use it with multiple dimensions. So 2 corners of technique and 2 corners of technology and 2 corners of talent at least, and then show people where they are now and then have them talk about where they might want to go. And then I have them do one, and I actually will have them roll dice sometimes. And I'll make the claim that sometimes, the fates just give you things. We don't always get to pick the technologies or the people we work with or the policies or practices of our organization. So let's sort of jumpstart it by just letting the fates take action right away. So these are different techniques we can use to help people as they think about how to bring technology into their own work practice. And then for you, I will say the teach one is try and think about how to trigger thinking in 4T the next time you have the chance to discuss the design, sale, or implementation of your technology. And I am so thankful for Siri and Alexa and Google, as I see them as our gateways, in that we can say, do you ever ask your phone something? Do you ever ask your home pod something? Do you understand the kind of technology that's behind it? How else could you use? What do you wish you could do with that technology? And I think in many cases, I know even in my own, I'm often very happy to discover someone's already figured that out for me, and I can do that thing. So top down, we need that. That's where the resources often flow. Bottom up, though, is where we're going to get this broad groundswell of shifts. And I think, too, the people who are more likely to do those bottom-up things are going to be the ones who are more protected in their careers. I won't say in their job, but in their careers. And how far down do I think this kind of thinking needs to go? Certainly in my executive classroom, we're talking about it all the time. Certainly with my undergraduate students, we're talking about it all the time. And this was not me setting them up. This was them with their technology that they had brought to a meeting. And then this is a San Francisco look, I believe, of high school students. And yeah, they're bringing their technology to the game too. So I'm going to claim we've got to go all the way down to the beginning, where people are first starting to use technologies and helping them think about how to help themselves. And I think this approach of thinking in 4T is one strategy for us to do that. So thank you so much. Susan, do we have any questions?
Hey, Terri, this is Jim. This is great. And I think I missed your version of this presentation at the Discovery Workshop, so it's great to see it. I saw some notes. Could you maybe say just, and I love the closing, how you went from, the executive MBA to the undergraduates to the high school students to closing with, obviously somebody even younger. But could you say a little bit more about, the network of people who are practicing the 4Ts right now? Are you, and maybe this is for Isaac to help more, but I'm just curious how you're trying to disseminate this.
Well, I'm giving as many talks as possible, and I've been giving most of these talks in front of HR executives. So they're in an interesting position because not only is HR an area where we've seen a huge amount of AI come into use, and their jobs are such that the benefits, in terms of screening applicants, finding applicants, are really clear. And so they've taken on these tools, not always in a 4T way, but at least they're aware that those tools are there and can support them in their work. And then at the same time, they understand that they're in a position where they're going to be having to deal with the workers who are displaced, if displacement's the direction it goes. And to a degree, they're also in charge of how do you help develop the people inside the organization in terms of helping them augment their work. So I'm getting out there as much as possible. I still can't decide, what's the best broad-based way. But, as you mentioned, presented at ISET, presenting at Hicks soon. We have the ISIS conference coming to San Francisco, and I'll get a chance to talk with some colleagues there. But I am actively looking for corporate partners who want to try and do some work where we could show, and this is what happens when you do. And we don't have that except from case examples at this point.
Yeah. So maybe also block your calendar for December 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. because there's something happening at Almaden, and I'll send you more information about it, actually, Terri. I'll send you a few emails right now for some ideas, but thanks for that answer. Great answer to the question.
Thank you.
And Terri, this is Yassi. If you're interested, I'm thinking maybe you want to be interviewed by our newsletter editors.
Ooh, that would be lovely.
Okay, I'll put you in touch with them.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, I'm thinking that we've come to the end. Susan, do you have a common close?
She may have been disconnected. She's usually very prompt at responding, Terri. So,
all right.
I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Haven't you been able to hear me all the time? I've been talking away. Oh my goodness. I've been chit-chatting to myself, it seems.
Oh no.
That's okay. That's okay. So sorry. Jim, I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
No, I was just saying I couldn't hear you, Susan. So now that we can hear you, take it away, Susan.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to invite people to thank the speaker in the chat. Please do so if you enjoyed the talk. And so, Terri, as we have a couple more minutes, do you just want to share with us what classes you teach? What is the name of the class, for example, for your postgrads?
So at Santa Clara University, I'm in the executive MBA program right now, and that is a program for people who have at least 10 years of experience. They match the demographics of the Silicon Valley, so a lot of folks coming in from tech organizations, and that one is focused on innovation and organizational change. So as you can imagine, we start with these ideas and we carry them forward. In the winter, I will have the general management class for our Masters of Science students. That one too, we start with these ideas and we carry them forward, but we do it along a map of kind of an employee life cycle, you know, from the beginnings of people coming into your team, designing your team. And for me, designing my team isn't just about the people, but it's about that whole system. And then in the spring, I have the best class of all, which is Cultures of Innovation, with a plural on that, cultures. And it's a course for undergraduates across the university where they have to take on a project that is not in kind of one of the Western developed world. It has to be somewhere else. And then they end up using these same ideas, but using it in a very different technological regime, you know, something more along, you know, only, you know, feature phone kinds of issues, and how could you use that to build tools that help people in those locations. So that one is absolutely fabulous to see what they're able to do.
So what strikes me is, firstly, I'm going to introduce you to some colleagues in a completely different region who work also in, who teach in business studies. I think they would be very interested in connecting with you. That was number one. And number two, I was wondering, as we have a lot of people from California on this call, can people take your classes part-time or while they work, or are they full-time class? You know, you have to be full-time registered.
Yeah, so I'm doing a terrible job marketing for my own organization. All of our graduate programs are built for people who have jobs. So we only teach in the evening or on the weekends for our graduate programs at this point. We also have an online MBA that is just coming up on its 1-year anniversary. And then our Silicon Valley Executive Center, which is our way of doing kind of outreach to the community, and it's actually a very global community. We do all sorts of either private programs for companies, or we're starting to do far more open enrollment programs. So I will do a tweet as soon as I get off here that is a connection to their work. And the beauty about them is we are very happy to customize programs. So you know.
That sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Terri, and that was a great talk, and thank you everybody for joining the call, and I think we'll close it now if there's no more questions. Yep. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.